The desert valley stretched wide under the burning sun, dust rising from the tires of armored trucks. The convoy moved slowly between the rocky ridges, soldiers scanning the cliffs with tense eyes, rifles ready but nerves running thin. The road seemed quiet, too quiet. And silence in war was often the loudest warning of all. Inside the lead truck, Sergeant Lewis leaned forward, sweat dripping down his face, his voice low as he muttered to the driver, "Something feels wrong here. Keep sharp." The driver nodded nervously. His hands gripping the wheel, the other soldiers shifted in their seats, the kind of silence before a storm pressing down on every chest. Then it began. The ridges exploded with sound. Machine gun fire tore across the valley. Bullets hammering against the convoy, sparks flying from metal, windows shattering. Soldiers ducked and shouted. Chaos erupted. The ambush had begun. Enemy fighters hidden in the rocks poured fire from all directions, dust and smoke filling the air. The convoy had nowhere to run. A rocket slammed into the last truck, fire roaring high, men scrambling for cover, trapped between walls of stone. The convoy became a cage, every movement answered by precise sniper fire from above. Soldiers tried to return shots but could not see the hidden attackers. Panic spread quickly. One young private screamed, "We will not last, we are pinned here!" Another soldier cursed, "The ridges are crawling with them!" Lewis crawled to the edge of the burning truck, shouting over the chaos, "Hold the line! Keep heads! Down!" But even his voice carried doubt. He had been in ambushes before, but never one this tight. Every second they stayed meant another casualty. The enemy had the high ground and the advantage. The convoy was a sitting target. Men pressed into the dirt, their hearts pounding. Every sound of ricochet, a reminder of death waiting in the cliffs. Then in the middle of the storm, something different happened. A sound sharper and cleaner than the rest, one rifle crack echoed across the valley. Just one, and then silence from one of the ridges. The enemy sniper who had been pinning them was gone, dropped instantly by a bullet that had come. From far away, nearly 900 yards across the rock and sand, the soldiers froze for a breath, eyes darting across the cliffs. Who fired that shot? Lewis scanned his men quickly, but none of their rifles had the range. None of them had even taken the shot. Confusion spread as quickly as relief. The enemy lines wavered, their attack less. Sharp now. The convoy found space to breathe. Another burst of fire came from the far ridge, the enemy trying to press the ambush again, but their movements had changed, more cautious now. Whoever had fired that one bullet had thrown them off balance. Lewis shouted orders, "Return fire, push back." His men rallied, taking courage from the sudden shift. The ambush was no longer as tight, but as they fought, the question echoed louder. Then the gunfire, who had taken that impossible shot, 900 yards, dead accurate. One round that changed everything. Rodriguez, the youngest in the squad, looked up wide-eyed, whispering to his friend, "Did you see it? Did you see where it came from?" His friend shook his head. "No, it was like it came from nowhere." When the smoke began to clear, when the last of the attackers slipped back into the rocks, the convoy counted the living, patched the wounded, and stared at each other in disbelief. Sergeant Lewis walked the line, checking faces, his mind racing with memories. He had heard of only one person who could fire like that, someone long gone, someone whispered about in quiet corners of bases, Captain Marroquin. The name burned in his thoughts, a sniper declared missing in action 10 years ago, last seen in the mountains during a mission that ended with nothing but silence and mystery. Her file closed, her name marked with 3 letters MIA. Her story told like a ghost tale to fresh recruits. But Lewis had been there once. He had seen her shoot, and the rhythm of that rifle crack was one he could never forget. That night by the campfire, the squad sat in uneasy silence, their voices low. Rodriguez asked again, "Who saved us out there?" Lewis stared into the flames for a long time, finally saying only one thing. "If it was who I think it was, then we were just saved by someone the world believes is gone. Someone who was declared missing 10 years ago?" His words hung heavy in the air. The younger soldiers laughed nervously, calling it impossible. Just a story. But the older ones grew quiet, their eyes dark because deep inside they knew legends often hide in shadows, and sometimes shadows return when they are needed most. The valley remained still in the distance, the ridges holding secrets no file could explain. Somewhere out there, a lone figure had taken one perfect shot, and whether ghost or living flesh, her bullet had changed the fight. Her bullet had kept them alive. And though the squad did not see her, the truth was clear. Someone was watching them from afar, someone who refused to be forgotten. The night after the ambush, the camp was quiet. The fire crackled low, shadows stretched across tired faces. The soldiers sat in silence, their nerves still raw from the day. Some whispered nervously, others stayed silent. But the same question hung in every mind: who had fired that shot from 900 yards? Who had ended the sniper threat with one perfect pull of the trigger sergeant? Lewis sat a little apart from the group, his eyes on the flames, his mind lost in memory. He had fought long enough to know when something was ordinary and when something was not, and that shot was not ordinary. It carried skill, control, and calm under pressure. It carried the signature of a legend long buried in the dust of old reports. Captain Mara Keene, her name whispered in old barracks tales, her story passed like smoke from veteran to recruit, but always with the same ending. She was declared missing in action, lost 10 years ago, gone without a trace. Rodriguez leaned forward, his young face lit by the fire, his voice low but eager. "Sergeant, was it one of ours? Could it have been another squad? Maybe a hidden support unit?" Lewis shook his head slowly, his tone heavy. "No, none of our rifles carried that kind of range today. None of our men fired it, and if it was support, we would have known." The men around the fire exchanged uneasy looks. The youngest laughed nervously, calling it luck. Maybe the enemy killed their own by mistake, but the older ones stayed quiet, their silence heavier. Than any joke later that night, Lewis walked the edge of the camp, his boots sinking softly into the sand, his eyes scanning the ridges under the pale moon, his thoughts circling the same impossible idea. Mara Keene had been more than a sniper. She had been a guardian on the battlefield, her shots reaching across impossible distances, her calm voice steady in chaos. He had seen her once lay flat on a rooftop under fire and still land a bullet that saved his squad. And now the sound of the valley shot had carried that same rhythm, that same ghost of precision. The next day, patrols were sent out. The squad moved carefully through the valleys, checking high ground, searching for signs. At one ridge, they found spent brass casings, polished by recent use. The caliber matched a sniper rifle none of them carried. Lewis crouched over the brass, his hand brushing the dirt, his jaw tightening. This was no coincidence. Someone had been here, someone with skill, and that someone had walked away unseen. The men muttered. One swore he felt eyes on him even now, like the valley itself was watching. By evening, the talk had spread through the base, whispers echoing through the halls. Some soldiers claimed it was a ghost, others swore it was a living sniper working in the shadows. The name Mara Keene rose again and again, some young soldiers dismissing it, calling it a myth, but others leaned in close, listening like children around a campfire, asking about her. Sergeant Hale, an older veteran from another squad, joined them, his voice gravelly. "Mara Keene was no myth," he said. "I fought beside her once. She was the best I ever saw, and if anyone could survive 10 years in silence, it would be her." The room grew still, the younger recruits shifting uneasily. Hale's words carried weight, his eyes sharp with memory. He told them of a mission long ago, a mission where his team had been trapped under heavy fire, and how Mara had crawled through mud and stone for hours to line up one impossible shot. How her bullet had ended the fight before it began. His voice dropped lower when command said she was gone. I never believed it. Not fully. Some part of me knew she would. Not fall so easily. Rodriguez leaned forward, eyes wide. But Sergeant, if she was declared missing, why would she be here now? Hale shook his head slowly. Maybe she was never gone. Maybe she chose to stay hidden. Maybe the war gave her no choice. The recruits looked at each other, unsure if they felt comfort or fear. The idea of a ghost sniper watching them from the shadows was both terrifying and strangely hopeful. That night again, the ridges stayed quiet. But men looked over their shoulders more often, scanning the rocks, searching for a figure they knew they would never truly see. Every snap of wind against stone made them flinch. Every shadow looked like the shape of a rifle. Lewis sat alone outside the tent, his hand resting on his knee, his voice low as he whispered to himself, "If it is you, Mara, then the fight is not over. Not yet." The mystery deepened with each passing hour. The impossible shot had saved them, but it had also opened a door to the past. A past full of questions buried by time. Now soldiers spoke her name like a prayer, like a warning, like a legend waking again. Captain Mara Keene, missing for 10 years. Maybe gone, maybe not. But her shadow was alive in their minds, and in the valley where the bullet had struck, silence itself seemed to carry her presence, unseen but undeniable. The days after the ambush moved slowly. Tension hung in the air like smoke. Patrols walked the ridges with eyes wide and rifles raised, but whispers grew louder than gunfire. Soldiers spoke in low voices about the ghost sniper, some saying it was luck, others saying it was fate. But those who had served longer said the same name again and again. Mara Keene, the woman who was declared missing 10 years ago, the woman who might still be out there watching. On the third day, another convoy rolled through the valley, this time prepared, machine guns mounted, soldiers scanning every ridge, the memory of the last ambush heavy on their minds. For a while, the desert stayed quiet, only wind curling dust into the air. Then the crack of enemy fire shattered the silence. Bullets rained down from hidden ridges, explosions tore into the sand, and the convoy scattered for cover, trapped again in the jaws of the valley. Rodriguez threw himself behind a rock, his breath ragged, his hands shaking as he shouted, "They had us marked again." "We are trapped," Lewis barked back. "Keep heads low, return fire." But his own eyes darted to the cliffs, searching desperately for an unseen savior. He did not say her name, but it burned in his chest. "If you are out there!" "Mara, now is the time." The ambush pressed hard. The enemy snipers' shots, precise and merciless. Every movement of the soldiers answered with deadly accuracy. Panic spread through the line, but then, like before, one single rifle crack cut through the chaos, sharp and clean. The enemy sniper fell silent, his body crumpling on the ridge 900 yards away. Another perfect bullet from nowhere, another impossible save. The soldiers froze in shock. Rodriguez's mouth hung open as he whispered, "No way, not again." Others muttered prayers. Some whispered ghost, some whispered her name. Lewis felt his chest tighten. That rhythm, that calm, it was her. It had to be. The squad rallied, their courage returning as the enemy scattered in confusion. The ambush broken for the second time by a single unseen hand. After the battle, the men searched the ridge where the sniper had fallen. They found the body. They found the shattered rifle. But what made their breath catch was something left behind on a nearby stone. A thin piece of green paracord tied with 3 simple knots. Lewis bent down slowly, his hand trembling as he picked it up, his voice rough as he spoke. This was her mark. Mara used to tie these after a shot. She said it was her way of counting. Lives saved. The recruits stared wide-eyed. The legend was no longer whispers. It was real. It was right in front of them. Word spread fast through the base. The story of the paracord knots lit fires in every corner. Some recruits were afraid, saying it was unnatural. Others were inspired, saying they had a guardian watching from the shadows. Sergeant Hale, the older veteran, listened carefully when Lewis brought him the paracord, his face pale, but his eyes sharp. "I knew it," he said firmly. "I told you she was no myth. She is alive, and she is still fighting." That night, the base was alive with talk. Soldiers gathered in groups, voices low, telling stories of the legendary Captain Mara Keene, of her impossible shots, of the missions she had carried alone when others would have broken. Rodriguez listened with awe, his young face lit by the stories. But Lewis sat in silence, his thoughts heavier. If she was alive, why had she stayed hidden? Why had she never come home? What had kept her in the shadows for 10 long years? On the 4th night, a patrol reported seeing a figure on the ridge at dusk, a lone silhouette against the dying light, tall and steady, with a rifle slung across the back by the time the patrol reached the ridge. The figure was gone. Only faint footprints remained in the dust. Hale heard the report and said quietly, "She does not want to be seen." "She only wants to protect," the recruits argued, some saying they should track her down, bring her back, others saying she should be left alone. Rodriguez asked the question that none could answer. "If she is alive, why stay hidden?" Lewis finally spoke, his voice low. "Because sometimes war takes more than a body. It takes pieces of the soul. Maybe she gave too much and could not come back. Maybe she only knows how to keep fighting from the shadows." The mystery deepened. Every man in the base carried the weight of it. Some felt safer knowing she was out there. Others felt uneasy, knowing a ghost walked their ridges. But all agreed on one thing. Whoever she was, she had changed their fate twice. And if the war had taught them anything, it was that sometimes the difference between life and death was a single unseen bullet. As the desert night grew colder, the soldiers lay awake in their bunks, the name Mara Keene echoing in their minds. Some whispered it like prayer, some like fear. But for Lewis, it was something else. It was memory and gratitude. It was the sound of a rifle crack from years ago, the same sound he had heard again. He whispered softly into the darkness, "Welcome back, Captain. Whether ghost or living flesh, you never left us at all." The next morning, the range was quiet, but the energy felt different. No more laughter at Elena, no more careless jokes. The recruits watched her with new eyes, eyes full of caution and respect. Sergeant Hale stood at the edge of the line, his arms folded, his gaze never leaving her. The instructor announced another round of training, more zeroing, more practice. But for many of the young recruits, their focus was not only on their rifles, it was on the small woman who had shown them something impossible. Elena went about her work in silence. She fired her shots, adjusted with precision, always calm, always steady, nothing flashy, nothing boastful. But her every movement carried weight now. Whispers spread down the line. Some recruits leaning to others, asking if she really was who Hale claimed. Some refusing to believe, some convinced without doubt. Yet Elena herself never admitted anything. She never confirmed. She never denied. She simply kept moving with quiet purpose. That evening, after Chow Rodriguez gathered the courage to approach her again, he carried his rifle and a notebook in his hands, his voice unsure but full of hope. "Elena, could you maybe teach me that method, the one you used?" Elena looked at him carefully, her eyes searching his. "Why do you want to learn it?" she asked. Rodriguez swallowed, his voice steadying. "Because one day I might be in a place where 4 shots are all I get before someone dies." Elena was silent for a moment, then finally nodded. "Meet me here after evening meal. Bring your rifle." Bring focus words spread quickly. Soon more recruits arrived, some shy, some eager, all curious. Elena did not turn them away. She lined them up, had them lay their rifles down, and began speaking in her calm, steady way. "This technique is not about speed for its own sake," she said. "It is about precision when lives depend on it. Every adjustment must have meaning. Every breath must have control. Do not chase fast hands, chase understanding." The recruits listened, their earlier arrogance stripped away. Now they absorbed every word like it was gold. She made them practice calculations first, pen on paper, numbers for wind and distance, humidity and pressure. Over and over, she corrected their errors patiently. She explained why each change mattered. She had them feel the rifles in different weather, forcing them to understand how steel and wood reacted under shifting air. Some grew frustrated, some failed, but Elena's calm voice never wavered. Smooth. Comes from repetition, she told them. Perfect comes from knowing that every shot has weight. Days passed. The secret sessions continued. More recruits joined. Even some instructors stood quietly in the shadows watching. Hale among them, he said nothing. But pride grew in his chest as he saw how she taught. Not with ego, but with patience. Not with glory, but with responsibility. She reminded them constantly that this was not a game, not for showing off, not for bragging. This was for the moment when someone's life would depend on their aim. Weeks later, Rodriguez found himself in a faraway place, a dusty street in Syria. His squad pinned down by sniper fire, bullets snapping over their heads, his heart pounding, fear choking his chest. Then he remembered Elena's voice. Every shot matters, every breath matters. He steadied himself. Laid. His rifle across broken stone began the sequence she had drilled into him. First shot wide, adjust. Second shot wider, adjust again. Third shot crossing back, his hands shaking but remembering the pattern. The fourth shot, steady breath, smooth trigger. The enemy sniper fell silent. His squad lived, he lived. And in that moment, he understood. Completely. Rodriguez later wrote Elena a letter. His words rough, but full of truth. Now I understand every shot carries a life. Thank you for teaching me. Elena received the letter weeks later. She read it quietly in her bunk, no expression on her face, but her hands tightened slightly around the paper. She folded it carefully and placed it inside her pack. No reply, no signature, just silence. But the meaning was there. Back at the training base. The sessions continued, new recruits arrived, old recruits moved on. But the whispers remained. About the woman who could zero in 4 shots, about the one Hale whispered was no rookie, about the quiet lessons after dark. On the range bulletin board, someone had pinned a scrap of paper, 4 shots, a lifetime to master. Nobody signed it. Nobody needed to. Everyone knew where it came from. Hale approached Elena one evening as she finished cleaning her rifle. His voice. Softer now, ma'am. What you're doing here is more than training. It is legacy. Elena shook her head. It is necessary, Sergeant. Knowledge dies if it is not passed. And when it dies, people die with it. Hale nodded slowly, understanding. He wanted to thank her, to say again what he had carried for years, but her steady eyes stopped him. He remembered her words. You honor them by living the life they saved. So he said nothing, only gave a small respectful nod and left on her final day at the course. Elena packed her worn bag, shouldered it quietly. The recruits gathered, unsure of what to say. Rodriguez spoke for them all. We know you are not just a student. We know you carry more than we can understand. But you changed how we see this job. Elena gave a small nod. Good, because this job is not about you. It is about the ones you protect. She walked away, her figure small against the wide horizon. Yet to those who watched, she seemed larger than anyone else they had ever met. And so her story remained, not written in files, not carved in stone, but carried in whispers, in lessons passed down, in soldiers who lived because of her hands, and in the quiet truth Sergeant Hale had spoken that first day. They laughed at her scope work until a veteran whispered, "That's no rookie." The night before the final convoy moved out, the base was heavy with silence. Men checked their rifles with tense hands, some whispered prayers, others stared at the ground. They all knew the enemy was planning something big. The ambushes had been too precise, too organized. Something larger was coming. Sergeant Lewis walked the line, his eyes scanning each soldier. He could feel the fear, but also the strange hope, the belief that someone unseen was watching over them, the belief in a ghost who fired from the shadows. At dawn, the convoy rolled into the valley, the sky pale and the air sharp with cold. The trucks rumbled forward, tires grinding stone, men keeping rifles tight to their shoulders, everyone waiting. For the attack, the valley stretched wide, cliffs rising on both sides, a perfect kill zone. The silence was unbearable. Rodriguez whispered nervously, "I do not like this." Lewis muttered back, "Neither do I. Keep sharp." Then it began. The ridges exploded with fire, rockets streaked into the convoy, trucks burst into flame, machine guns tore through the dust, men shouted and scrambled for cover, bullets rained down from every direction. The ambush was larger than anything before, dozens of enemy fighters pouring fire into the trapped column. Soldiers fell into the dirt, their rifles answering but barely making a dent against the storm. Panic spread quickly. Rodriguez screamed, "We cannot hold. We are surrounded. The enemy." Sniper returned, his shots ruthless and unrelenting. Every soldier who tried to lift his head was met with instant fire. Lewis felt his chest tighten. They were minutes from being wiped out. His voice roared through the chaos. "Stay low. Stay. Alive." But even as he shouted, he knew it was hopeless. Then it happened. A single rifle crack, sharp and clean. One sound cutting through the chaos. The enemy sniper fell back lifeless from his ridge, a perfect shot from 900 yards away, a shot that turned the tide. The soldiers gasped. Some lifted their heads, courage rushing back into their veins. Rodriguez shouted, "She is here! She is with us!" The men fired harder, pushing back against the ambush. The sudden gap in enemy fire gave them strength. The convoy rallied. Grenades launched, rifles cracked, machine guns thundered. Slowly, the attackers began to break, the valley echoing with the sound of retreat. The impossible had shifted. They had survived because of her again. When the battle was over, the smoke hung thick, the ground littered with brass and broken stone. Lewis led a small team toward the ridge where the enemy sniper had fallen, his boots heavy, his heart racing. They climbed the rocks, their breaths ragged. When they reached the top, they found the body of the fallen enemy, the shattered scope beside him. But what made every soldier fall silent was what lay on the stone nearby. A weathered dog tag, its surface scratched and worn, the name still clear. Captain Marroquin Rodriguez picked it up with trembling fingers, his voice barely more than a whisper. "It is her." Lewis took the tag gently, his eyes burning with memory, his voice thick. She was declared missing 10 years ago, but she never stopped fighting. Hale stepped forward, his hand resting on the tag, his voice steady. She never left the war. She only chose to fight where nobody could see. Around them, the wind carried silence. No figure stood waiting. No shadow lingered. Only the dog tag and the memory